Hello, this is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the Tennessean. Today I have the pleasure of having as my guest Freddie O'Connell, a council member for District 19 and a candidate for mayor in the 2023 municipal election here in Nashville, Davidson County. Councilman, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thanks, David. How are you?
Thank you. Could you tell our readers, why are you running for mayor?
Sure. I'm running for mayor fundamentally because I've heard from you all, my constituents in District 19, but since I announced last May, traveling the entire county, I hear very loudly and clearly the same things that I experience myself. Cost of living is increasing and there are pressures on quality of life. I and my family experience these things on a regular basis, and I think we have very real and meaningful policy options we can pursue that let us tackle both of those things. I'm a native Nashvilleian, and I've had an incredible diversity of experiences, some just in my private and family life and private sector life in the technology industry over the past 20 years, but then over the past 15 years, starting from the level of service on the Nashville MTA Board of Directors and then working on the Metro Council in the most economically important part of the city for the past 7 years, I've accumulated the right set of experiences that let me know how to use the Metro government's tools to tackle both of those issues effectively.
You talk a lot about the linkage between affordable housing and transit. Would you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, and this is, again, a part of my lived experience. I was, like so many Americans who have chosen to go to college, came out of that experience, one, with a great education, but two, with a significant debt burden in the form of student loans. I came from a barely middle class family. I did not want to carry debt around with me for a long time, so one of my first tasks was to pay off that undergraduate debt. Well, unfortunately, the car I was driving at the time had a catastrophic transmission failure, and that was poor timing because I had just become debt-free. I didn't want to go back into debt buying a car, and so I learned how to navigate our transit system and extend my range by buying a bike, which is much more cost-effective than a car. Over the 3.5 years that I was car-free, I saved up what the implicit tax we impose on anybody by expecting them to own a car in Nashville is, which is about $8,000 a year. That was enough, it turns out, for a down payment on a house. In my view, transit and infrastructure, and when we deliver meaningful options for people, is housing policy. It doesn't create affordable housing, but what it does do is it lowers a household's costs and allows housing to be more attainable for them and to have more discretionary income. I want the same option I had to be more meaningful and more accessible to more people. And so to me, transit and affordable housing should not be decoupled. They're in many ways two parts of the same conversation.
You've served on the Metro Council for 2 terms, so almost 8 years, and we can talk a little bit about, especially since we have a lot of newcomers who are in Davidson County, what are the things that you're proudest of and what are the problems that you still need to solve?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the things I'm proudest of is even before I really knew about the consequences of Nashville's unfortunate legacy of mass incarceration through a Brookings report a few years ago that ultimately caused Vice Mayor Schulman to create a special committee to address issues in the 37208 zip code, where I've lived for the past 15 years or more. I didn't know when I moved to 37208 what the Brookings Institution report revealed, which is if you were born in that zip code from 1980 to 1986, you were more likely later in life to become incarcerated than any other zip code in the entire United States of America. This is a never again moment. But even before that, I knew when I got elected to District 19 that we were one of the highest per capita poverty districts in the city. We had an unfortunate amount of concentrated poverty, and I wanted to address that primarily through offering people better opportunities, and that includes in our 2, at the time, challenging elementary schools of Buena Vista, which serves more, again, it's been consolidated since, but it served more homeless students than any other school, and Napier Elementary, which exists in a context where there is not a lot of mix of income. It is effectively a school that is contextualized by concentrated poverty. And I wanted all of those students to be able to someday have success at the other 2 schools that I represented in District 19, which are respectively Hume Fogg and Martin Luther King, which are two magnet schools. And so if we can build the bridges to allow any student who starts off in a challenging context to succeed in a challenging in a different way, in a very rigorous context, then we're working very hard. But along the way, I discovered the costs of our criminal legal system in so many ways. We had a so-called jailer's fee, which was being applied to people who were incarcerated pre-trial. Why were they incarcerated before they had a trial? Because they had too little money to be able to post bond. In many cases, these weren't violent crimes. They were just the kinds of things that you have to wait for trial before that happens. And so you may be in the Nashville jail for up to 30 days, and we were charging you every day you were there $44 a day. Well, that wasn't actually going back to the sheriff's office to cover the cost of your housing. That was coming into the general fund. Effectively, we were operating the metro government to the tune of millions of dollars a year on the backs of people, part of whose crime, if they were even guilty of a crime, was being poor. We put that money back into the local economy by eliminating that jailer's fee, and so that when people completed whatever their interaction was with the criminal legal system, not only did they not get stuck with a big bill, their personal financial futures were better. And so it has not only a financial empowerment impact, it has a positive public safety impact, because people are less likely to wind up being even in the position where they might think of committing a crime because they don't have enough money in their pocket, right? And so eliminating the jailer's fees, doing the work of the 37208 committee, which produced a much more comprehensive fines and fees study, where we've now systematically eliminated what I would call punitive fines and fees, have led to that twin process of more financial empowerment for people who have in the list of being crimes being poor, which is a very hard situation to be. You may have heard of the high cost of being poor, right? And then also has a positive public safety impact. And so I'm very proud that we started some work in my first term that led to a much more comprehensive approach to repairing some of the damage of the process that led to 37208 producing so much incarceration later. And I think that's really important. Similarly, I'm very proud of demonstrating that cities not only can but should lead on climate. In my first term as well, we passed a series of 3 significant bills that did important things for Metro. Metro will soon have all of our power supplied by renewable sources. We will soon have a low emission fleet that eventually transitions to a zero emission fleet for the standard vehicles within Metro. And we have much stronger green building standards that apply not just to new buildings that are constructed, but also buildings that are renovated. The good news there is the cost savings from those more energy efficient buildings go into the process of creating better power. So we're producing better taxpayer efficiency through this program that pays it forward, and we're producing cleaner air, and we're demonstrating that cities can lead on climate. I think also, while it hasn't been as fundamental a success, we've delivered some meaningful advancements on transit and infrastructure. We have maintained a focus on what has become known as Vision Zero, where we are trying to reduce pedestrian fatalities in particular year over year, but also cyclist crashes and fatalities as well. And we have made small advancements in letting our transit system exist in more concentrated community areas. Like we just broke ground on a North Nashville Community Transit Center. We just cut the ribbon on a Green Hills Community Transit Center. And I think we have a few more programmed, and I've been able to do work specifically to create more pockets of funding there. And then the final thing I'll say is that knowing that cost of living is going up, even when respective mayor's offices have not fundamentally followed the recommendations that come from within Metro about appropriate wages for Metro employees, including teachers, including support staff in schools, including first responders and whole of government. I have been part of a coalition on council that has really looked at that as one of our most important hedges against cost of living increases. So I'm very proud of some of the things we've been able to do to pay people who deserve it much more fairly.
Thank you. I was at a neighborhood cleanup not too long ago where I heard citizens say, how is it that Nashville can afford to build a new stadium for a football team and not pick up the trash? And I don't know if you've heard the same thing. And how do you decouple it for people, especially since these policy issues can be pretty complicated?
I mean, for me, that's pretty easy. I don't think that the stadium is the priority of the moment. I don't think that this deal is the right deal for the citizens of Nashville. And I think we should have spent much more energy on crafting a deal that, if we're going to produce a stadium, had much clearer benefits for the general public, had much more investment, or at least less imbalanced investment between Metro taxpayer and the team in the league, and produced much greater certainty about the use of public land going forward. And I say that as somebody who, when they came into Metro Council the week before Christmas, 2 Christmases ago, I spent my Christmas break picking up my own constituents, recycling myself, borrowing and renting trucks to do it, because I thought it was absurd that with no warning, no backup plan, we suspended indefinitely a core city service, and that is not an acceptable response from a municipal government that has just asked its citizens to pay a much higher, and I mean, our family feels it, much higher property taxes, right? And so in our own neighborhood, I heard from a long-term neighbor recently that she feels that despite watching property values go up, despite knowing that we're paying more into it, she feels like city services have reversed. And I am intent on doing what I can personally, first and foremost, but also one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is we deserve excellence in city services, and my priority is going to be on Nashville residents. It is not going to be on shiny objects or toys for tourists.
It was a few years ago, there was a push in Nashville through the Brookings Institution to do an inclusive prosperity match. They had done a little work in North Nashville, and we have a lot of Nashville natives like yourself who are feeling that they don't recognize the city anymore. You know, it's actually been 10 years since the New York Times called Nashville and its city. So how do we create that inclusive prosperity?
It's a multifaceted thing. I mean, you have already mentioned some of these issues are very complex. This is why, though, I want to restore a focus on strategic economic development, and why I want the mayor's office to reinvest in workforce development in particular. We have, unfortunately, over most of this term, taken our eye off the ball there, and that means we haven't had, for most of the term, somebody focused on how our economy includes everyone. And that is, to me, one of the critical tasks of the mayor, is to ensure that we are constantly thinking about what has happened in our local economy. And one of our greatest risks is if our teachers and first responders and civil servants can't live in the community we're asking them to serve, if our healthcare and hospitality workforce can't live in the community that they are trying to support and make a great destination for other people, if they're pushed out to the ring counties, our economy is going to hollow out. And so much of the overall prosperity that we have produced over the past decade or more is going to start to retract, and that's a risk that we should all be aware of. And so I think it is critical for the mayor's office to leverage partnerships with organizations like Corner to Corner, which is looking at amazing opportunities for people who want to participate in the economy as entrepreneurs. It is important to look at the Nashville Business Incubation Center and look at how they are supporting similar principles of letting people start and grow local businesses, and look at ways to take innovations in manufacturing and other industries that may not be the giant kind of knowledge economy names like Amazon and Microsoft, and build stronger pipelines from the Napier Elementaries to our high schools and then into our amazing array of local universities like Fisk and Trevecca that have innovative programs, and make sure that that pipeline is as local as possible. Because the dream I have is I want my 2 daughters to be able to choose to stay in Nashville as adults if they want to, and have opportunities to do so. And if we are not strategic about that, we're going to miss those opportunities. But the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, I just heard this morning a great new piece of that is adding a B on the end, and that is belonging, right? I want people to realize that not only do they belong in Nashville, but that they have a mayor who is fighting for them to be able to do so.
I'd like to ask candidates about what recommendations they would have for visitors who have a short time here in Nashville to see, to eat. What are 2 or 3 things that they should do?
All right, you probably know from an eating standpoint, come to Salem Town and visit Big Al's Deli. He has a t-shirt that says, "Food so good it'll make your mama slap you." And it's hard to build a hole in the wall, right? And so this is one of Nashville's best sort of hole in the wall, off the beaten path venues to go get breakfast or lunch, so don't overlook Big Al's Deli. Another just incredible sort of North Nashville destination is Silver Sands. It's in the Hope Gardens neighborhood, but it is, again, it's an amazing place to walk through basically a buffet line and get some of the best Southern soul food that you'll find in the city. I encourage people that want a real sense of Nashville's history. Yes, absolutely visit our extraordinary new showpiece of the National Museum of African American Music. It is a wonderful interactive tour of how Nashville, and if I said Nashville, it's the National Museum of African American Music, but how Nashville has a legacy that is national, and it's a wonderful experience. But then go over to Jefferson Street and find the Jefferson Street Sound Museum and learn the specific legends and institutions that used to make up this incredibly important cultural corridor. Then go out Murfreesboro Road and check out the Lane Motor Museum. It's one of the most distinctive museum experiences in the city. I mean, certainly do the big pieces too, like the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum and the First Art Museum, but get off the beaten path a little bit too.
Thank you. Any final thoughts or words before we conclude?
No, I'm eager to earn your vote on August 3rd. You can find more at readyforfreddie.com, and I'm so delighted to sit down with you today, David.
Now, thank you, Councilman. And to our viewers and readers, please keep up with our coverage at Tennessean.com. Thank you so much.